I was 8 years old, playing outside of the family house about 10 meters from the back porch. It was late morning before lunch, perhaps 11. I was on my own and just wasting time before lunch. I was a little bored. My mother was inside the house in the kitchen. My father had recently acquired an industrial freezer, and the door was propped open by a plank of wood. I stepped inside the freezer and crouched and walked to the back. As I did, the freezer unit wobbled and the plank fell, and the door shut and locked. It was pitch black, and the smell was musty. I tried to open the door but could not. I felt very frightened and slumped down in the back left-hand corner. Very soon I was struggling to breathe, and my chest became tight. I thought that I was going to die. I remember placing my head in my hands and preparing to die. Then I was outside of my body and in the freezer above the porch. I can remember directly looking down at my father, and I could hear his voice and that of my mother. I was quite high up and could see the whole of the backyard and the freezer with the door shut. I heard my father say to my mother, "Where is Jane?" My mother answered, "Outside playing." "Where?" he asked. He left the kitchen and stood outside the porch, looking. At this time I was above the porch looking down, and I willed and willed my father to come and find me. I remember thinking, "Please find me." He looked out and saw the freezer door shut. He ran to the freezer, and the next thing I remember was being dragged out. I was not fully conscious. My father carried me in his arms quickly to the kitchen, and I can remember inhaling the first full breath of air, and it was wonderful. He placed me on a chair in the kitchen just inside the back door. I was confused and shocked, and there was some fussing. My father was upset and relieved and shocked. He suggested I have some water and should be taken to my parents' bedroom to lie down and rest. He left immediately and removed the freezer door. I can remember lying on my father's bed, resting and feeling confused and frightened. My father left to remove the door, and my mother left to complete her luncheon preparation and housework. It seemed everything was carrying on as normal. I felt I needed more attention and love. Nothing was mentioned about this event, and I have never spoken about the event to my parents. My father died in March 2016, and I never discussed it with him. I aim to speak with my mother at some time in the future. My feelings and thoughts about the event as a child were: 1. I was angry that my father was stupid enough not to remove the door earlier, and 2. I sensed my mother was angry that I had wandered into the freezer. I somehow felt that she wished I had not survived, and from that time onwards, my relationship with my mother was not good. I felt overall that the trust I had in my parents had diminished. I never thought until recently that this experience was or could be classified as an NDE, but I realized that the experience has recently become very significant. I pushed the memory away, and only in the past 2 years have I been able to connect with the memory. As a young adult, I could not have any object placed over my face, and I would not allow anyone to touch my head or face. I would frequently wake up from sleeping, imagining I was suffocating, only to find that my duvet cover was over my face. Once or twice, I have panicked about being locked in a room, for example on a train in the loo, and once in a music practice room where the caretaker locked the doors without checking if students were in the practice rooms. I also developed a fear of deep water. The worst thing was the fear of dying. At night, as a child, when resting in bed in the dark, I sensed my heart rate and breathing slowing down, and I feared I would die. The fear of death has been strong, especially at night, and I have suffered from sleeping disorders. 2 years ago, I sought therapy, and my disrupted sleeping has now improved, and I can say that I do not have an extreme fear of death. Today, at 59 years old, I am the happiest I have ever been. I am currently researching the afterlife after reading Raymond Moody, and I continually question what happens after we die. I learned that the IONS website existed after viewing a DVD film entitled Afterlife, in which Raymond Moody was interviewed. Viewing the film Afterlife has had a significant impact on me. I sense a deep change is happening within me, in the sense that I feel my life now has a purpose, that I am aware of unconditional love, and that I need to live life as I am, as a curious human being who has experienced something very important, and this realization is ultimately freeing me of a lot of unhappiness. When I experienced near suffocation as a child, it was confusing and frightening. Now, much later in my life, I am beginning to understand the importance of what happened. That does it for our first story, moving into our second story. In 2014, when I was 15 years old, I had a seizure that caused me to code, no heartbeat. The nurses called the rapid response code, and I was once again taken back to the ICU. When I got to the room with machines connected to me, that was when I started to drift from the world. I felt my soul leave my body and travel through the hospital building towards the skies. When you die, there is no time. This is why I don't remember how long it took me to see the light and be absorbed by it. All I remember is that after a few moments, after the bright light absorbed me, I saw God's face and wondered how I got there. He looked at me with a calm expression and spoke to me in a peaceful, low voice. "You are suffering too much down there, so I thought you deserved a break from the chaos. Look at what's going on." I looked down with a strange feeling. I did see everything that was going on. Monitors beeping, my mom sobbing, my grandmothers praying with the scariest look on their faces. I felt guilty, and right at that moment, my heart sank. I felt awful. After seeing all of what was happening, he took my hand and said, "Let's take a walk and meet some people." In that split second, I saw my grandfather who had died in 2000. I was only a year old when he passed. My mother has told me many times that he and I had a great relationship. I knew he was there, and it was him because he looked just like he does in the photos of when he was a young man. He took me in his arms and rocked me for a bit. I met his brother, whom, unfortunately, I had never met when either one of us was alive. We all had a great time. I met some Vietnam War veterans, and they told me really interesting stories of their time away from home. At the end of my visit, I met a little girl with beautiful blue eyes and light blonde hair. She was precious. After I met her, God said, "It is time for you to go back. I promise you will be back soon. I'll watch over you. That is a promise." I wasn't happy. I said, But why? I don't want to go yet, please." God looked straight through me and said, "I am answering your grandmother's prayers." At that moment, I started to falling lower and lower with each thought of uneasiness about coming back to the living realm. I crossed through a river that I recognized as the other world, the dead realm, and back to the building to my room in the ICU. Once my soul entered my body, my heart beat again, and I regained color and shallow breathing. Everyone was relieved. I felt it in me. That does it for our second story of the evening. Do you guys believe that Jane from the first story had the right to blame her father for her accident? Do you believe that her mother truly wished she had died? In the second story, do you believe that the young woman met God during her seizure? What do you think about her meeting her grandfather 14 years after his death? Let me know what you thought in the comment section below. Until the next video, be blessed.